I'm going to do another favorite kind of appetizer dish that you find in a lot of sushi restaurants. It's definitely an izakaya type dish, but in the States, I've actually seen it on a lot of menus as part of the appetizer course at like sushi restaurants and like teppanyaki places. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Nakatomi Test Kitchen. I am your host, Kelly Nakatomi. So in the States, it's called Agedashi tofu because tofu is something that everybody understands the word for. In Japan, it's actually called Agedashi Dofu because Agedashi and tofu, when they put together, the T sound becomes a D sound. And Agedashi Dofu is literally tofu fried and put in a dashi broth. Super simple to make, very, very inexpensive to make when you make it at home. So let's get started. First of all, we're going to start with a medium firm tofu. The soft tofu is almost too delicate to use for something like this. So you don't really want to use anything that's extra firm either because it's got, to me, too much of a chew. So a medium firm tofu, if you're buying at a Japanese supermarket, then it would be momen dofu as opposed to kinugoshi dofu. And what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and cut it into whatever size you would like to have. So you don't want to make it too small, you don't want to make them too big. About that size, is something that you can kind of cut and have in a couple of bite-sized pieces is probably the correct size. So in my case, I would cut the tofu into thirds and then long ways. So you actually end up with like 6 pieces. And then when you have those pieces, you are actually going to wrap it in a paper towel, and then you're going to weigh it down with some kind of weight and leave it alone for 20 minutes. You want to kind of get some of the water out of the tofu so that it fries better and it stays a little bit more solid. So in my case, I've got a couple of glass bowls with the katakuriko potato starch that we're going to be using to coat the tofu, and on top of a baking tray. And you can see already that after 20 minutes, the tofu blocks have gotten, like, all the water, not all of it, but a good amount of water has come out of the tofu into the paper towel. And it's a little bit easier to handle that way. I've got some smaller pieces that I prepared earlier. It is always a good idea to have test versions. So these are a little bit smaller, and these were also patted dry and then had the weight put on it with paper towels for about 20 minutes. Once you are ready to go, it kind of goes pretty quickly from there. You're going to take the potato starch, and I'm going to use this bowl. And because this is an Agedashi tofu, the dashi broth is going to have plenty of salt in it, so you're not going to want to salt this at all, and you're also not using like a regular wheat flour. In a later episode, I will do a version of this that does use white flour and just regular bread flour, and it becomes a crunchier agedashi tofu, but that's actually something that you can do with a thicker sauce. So that'll be an episode that I do in the future. I'm going to get my trusty kondo in place. And I'm going to add vegetable oil to this. And you're not really kind of deep frying, you're definitely pan frying, so you don't really want to use a deep fat fryer or anything like that, but you do want to have, I don't know, about a 1/4 inch of frying oil in the frying pan. And then you're going to put this on a medium to low heat and go ahead and set that aside so it can kind of warm up. While we wait for that, we're going to go ahead and prep our tofu. Just literally all you're doing is putting the potato starch, the katakuriko, all over the tofu. And then you're just kind of knocking off the excess. Without making too much of a mess. You're definitely not going to want to have something that's super thick on here, like a batter. You want something that's just a really light coating. I'm going to use my wet paper towel to just kind of wipe things down just a little bit. Because there is katakuriko powder everywhere. Prepare this for after I'm done frying. And then here's a good test. If you have a pair of chopsticks or you have a wooden spoon, you just dip your chopsticks into the hot water, and if it starts sizzling just a little bit, you start seeing like little air bubbles, then it's ready to go. If you don't see it, it's still too cold. So that's a little Japanese mom's trick for testing and so making sure that your frying oil is warm enough. If you don't have like a digital thermometer or anything like that. Is it getting there? I think it's getting there. Another test that you can use is to actually take a little bit of the katakuriko powder and see if that sizzles. That's actually a really good test too. So once those are ready, you want to go ahead and set these in the oil. And be careful not to crowd your frying pan. You just want to just give them enough space to just kind of do their thing. And you're going to basically cook it until it's golden brown on both sides. Because you kind of have the oil halfway up, you shouldn't have to worry about cooking it on the sides, on the edges, because the pieces are smaller. And because you've pressed a good portion of the water out of the tofu, you still have a soft tofu, but it's not going to spatter as badly. ahead and put this last piece in. And it's just a matter of waiting and enjoying a little frying ASMR. And obviously you want to just keep checking it once in a while and making sure that they don't touch each other. And it's just a waiting game at this point. Now you can use tongs if you are not as proficient with cooking chopsticks. Because the tofu has been pressed, it's not super soft, and then as it cooks and fries in the frying oil, you know, that potato starch on the outside, the katakuriko, does make like a coating. So it does kind of make the whole thing a little bit sturdier to pick up, but use tongs if you must. I would not use a spoon or a spatula for this. You can tell I put the frying pan a little bit further away from me this time, just in case. These are coming out so great today. Sometimes I do them and they don't come out so great. So I'm glad that my bits of tofu are not having any stage fright. The second side always seems to take a little less time to cook. And this will only get like a little bit golden brown because you're not using like a wheat flour. You're using just a potato starch, kind of like a cornstarch. So it will turn a little light, we call it kitsune, like the fox color, but not necessarily like that golden brown that you're gonna see like with fried chicken or anything like that. These larger pieces are going to take a little bit longer to cook. The sizzling sound is so soothing. And if you had actually not done the pressing with the water, with the paper towels around the tofu for like at least 20 minutes, half an hour, the minute you would have put this into the frying pan, because the potato starch would have gotten wet and soggy, it would have spattered everywhere and been just a mess. And in addition to that, the coating would not stay stuck to the tofu, and you end up with an Agedashi Dofu that's like, when you break it apart, you have tofu and you have like coating, and they're kind of separate, where you kind of want to keep them together. Okay, I'm going to turn off the heat. There's always one piece of tofu that's like the hero piece, that's like the prettiest one. I think that last one would have been that. Okay, so now that we have our finished agedashi, well, not our just our finished dofu, which is our deep fried tofu, I'm going to go ahead and set aside the oil, and we're going to move on to our second part, which is the dashi portion of our dish, which is in a pot, you are going to have my trusty mentsuyu, honsuyu, which is a concentrated soup base that's got dashi, it's got mirin, sake, and soy. All of those already kind of pre-mixed. If you don't have a way to purchase mentsuyu in your area, it's available on Amazon, but if you are not an Amazon kind of person, you can easily make this with some dashi powder and mirin, sake, soy in your preferred proportions. For Agedashi Dofu, it is, where are you? Got the right measurement. It's half a cup of the mentsuyu base, which is a concentrate. And there's probably like 15 different bottles, all from different companies, all taste a little bit different. My favorite is this honsuyu, which is made by Kikkoman, the soy sauce company, but especially like in regional parts of Japan, you can find like local, handmade, handcrafted tsuyu sauces that are amazing. So to the half cup of mentsuyu base, you're going to add a cup and a half of water. This one. And a half. You'll find with the honsuyu, the concentrated base, that, and sometimes it's written on the back of the bottle too, is suggested dilution measurements. You can use it directly as is, but you could also use it diluted for things like soba, for things like tempura, for things like Agedashi Dofu. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this on and heat this up. And this, you're gonna go ahead and heat to a, kind of like a good simmer, like a low boil. If you like the smell of like tempura dipping sauce or soba, this scent will be very, very reminiscent of those things, because that's really exactly what it is. It's just a tsuyu base that's been diluted with water. So it's a 1 to 3. Once this has come to a low simmer, you can go ahead and turn it off the heat. And you can go ahead and get it ready for serving. Let me go ahead and put away the kondo and get my dishes ready. And one other thing we're going to do is prepare our kind of like veggie toppers. So put this in the soup. Traditional Agedashi Dofu, or Agedashi Tofu toppings is my trusty grated ginger out of a tube, or you can grate your own. And these are usually served kind of alongside your bowl of Agedashi tofu, so that you can actually add whatever you'd like to whatever dimensions or proportions that you would like. A little bit of green onions. But just the green parts, not the white parts. And then something that is very, very common with Agedashi Dofu is daikon. And daikon oroshi, which means grated daikon radish, is such a great part of Agedashi Dofu because you can mix plenty of it into the broth and it actually makes this like additional kind of textural thing. Depending on what part of the daikon radish you use, it can be kind of on the spicier side or a milder side. So with any daikon that you buy now, a lot of stores in the States already have daikon that's been cut into pieces, so you have no idea which part of the daikon you're getting. Most Asian markets have piles and piles of good daikon. This is from the local Korean market here. There were literally, I went to a Whole Foods where they had like organic but tiny little stubby pieces of daikon. I went to the local Japanese market. Unfortunately, they had already sold out. So I went to the huge Korean market here in Vegas, and they literally had a mountain of daikon because daikon is such a great winter vegetable. So when you look at this, like obviously you can tell where the stalks would have been coming out. The top part is fairly sweet. The middle part is abundantly sweet. It's really, really good for things like stews. It's really good for things like oden. And then the bottom part is probably the spiciest part. So it's kind of up to you which part of the daikon you'd like to use for your dish. I'm going to go with the kind of halfway through. Slightly sweet, slightly sharp. Now you can use a peeler for this. Or you can try your hand kind of peeling the outside by hand. Yeah, and you can smell how extra spicy it is. On the grater, you want to use the thinnest part, just the grater part, not the shreddy part. And be careful not to shred your fingers or your nails. And as you can tell, daikon is a very, very watery vegetable. So you want to actually squeeze some of that out. And I totally forgot to have an extra bowl. So it's gonna actually get squeezed right on top of my cutting board. And that can just go on top of your plate. And the amount of daikon radish that you want to put in your bowl of Agedashi Dofu is completely up to you. I'm actually going to grate a little bit more. And daikon radish, as a general rule, daikon as a vegetable, as a general rule, even before you grate it, is a super healthy vegetable. It has plenty of vitamins and fiber. I need to be better prepared next time. There we go. And now that we have everything kind of ready to go, I'm going to put this away. And then we're ready to kind of plate everything together. So you've got your little tray of what we call yakumi. Yakumi is literally, if you look at the Japanese characters for it, it means medicinal flavors. So it's basically herbs and spices. So ginger, green onions, daikon, oroshi. I'm going to add our dashi broth to our bowl. Oh, it smells so good. And then we're going to mount our pieces of tofu into the dashi broth. I think I only need 3 pieces for this. And then the trusty chopsticks, once you have it at your setting at your table, you're going to add your daikon oroshi, your ginger, and your green onions. As always, I'm ready to do my taste test. So you're going to take the daikon oroshi, you're going to kind of mix it into your dashi broth. And then you're going to take your piece of tofu and take, ooh, it's warm, it's a nice healthy bite. The potato starch makes for slightly crunchy, not super crunchy because it's not a regular wheat flour. The tofu inside is still soft and it's warm. The dashi broth gets seeped into the potato starch kind of batter coating on the outside. So good. If you go to your local sushi place, this as an appetizer is easily $5, $6, $7. You can make this at home with, I don't know, in this case I used half a brick of tofu and a couple of extra ingredients with the dashi and the katakuriko potato starch, daikon, onion and ginger. So simple to make, so good for you, super, super healthy, even though it's deep fried or pan fried. You can, I guess, have this with a bowl of rice if you'd like. I tend to have Agedashi tofu by itself because I think that the outside wrapping of the potato starch is enough carbs for me. And it's super filling. It's a great kind of light snack, late night dinner kind of thing to have. I hope you try it at home. I will do an episode in the future where I'm making like a crispier Agedashi tofu that actually has like a thicker sauce that's covered in mushrooms and things like that. So stay tuned for that episode. Again, this is Nakatomi Test Kitchen. I am Kelly Nakatomi, and I'll see you next time.